Hello everyone. Today we have a very special guest, someone you may recognize from the Final Fantasy content creation space. I'm very excited to introduce our friend, BltzZ. We'll be discussing the gaming industry, things we're hype about in Monster Hunter Wilds and Final Fantasy Rebirth, and as of the making of this video, the second part of Rebirth demo is about to drop. We'll even throw in a little bit about ourselves and our journeys in content creation, so please sit back, grab a drink or snack, and it'll be my pleasure to introduce the one and only BltzZ. And we are rolling. Hello, everyone. We have a very handsome gentleman here joining us today.
Oh,
we have
stop you.
stop. We have BltzZ. How you doing, BltzZ? Good to see you, man.
Thanks for having me, bro. It feels great. Feels great, man. I mean, I don't know when this will be uploaded, but like, I'm pretty sure people will know, like, this is the week of, it's February 19th. It's only going to get crazier from here. We got a lot of amazing stuff coming up, and I'm just excited.
Well, I mean, I'm very excited to play the second piece of the Final Fantasy VII Remake trailer, or Rebirth trailer, rather. And then next week, okay, you got to answer me this question. Which edition did you pre-order?
Collectors, actually. I have the statue of Sephiroth coming in. I'm the unfortunate one that did not get an alert saying that yours is coming early, and I'm like, I paid for the extra shipping too. I thought that would have helped me get it, but it's not coming in, unfortunately, until probably release day or maybe afterwards. But 19 inches of Sephiroth will be right there where that cloud is. Actually, you'll probably be replacing that cloud right over there.
That's fair. I was going to say, it doesn't look like that's enough space to hold 19 inches of Sephiroth, and I've got
I gotta get a whole new room, bro.
I've got some shelves, like lantern style lamps in the back there, and you can't see, but behind my tower is actually an aerith that sits about 12 inches tall. And so I'm going to be replacing my Dark Souls 2 character over there with the Sephiroth. So I don't know if you do unboxings and whatnot, but I'm actually excited to do an unboxing of my my Rebirth.
I think I very much will, actually. I've only done two unboxings on the channel, the PS5 unboxing and this FF16 creator box that they gave us for the event last year.
Fantastic. Hey, look at that. Would you look at the alert? Let's go. Someone just
rolling it.
Before the camera started rolling, we were talking about the notifications and the notifications going off. We're just going to call attention to them when they come in. Let's celebrate it together.
That's just the magic of OBS.
I feel you. I don't know. OBS has been the bane of my existence for the better part of the last year, but that's neither here nor there.
Oh man, I started off with Streamlabs OBS, and for whatever reason, my computer was just not cooperating with it whatsoever. I have a dual PC setup now, and I just feel like OBS, for me personally, because it's like you can remove things you don't need and you can add things that you preferably want, and I like that interface a little bit more. And I feel like the recording aspect of it was a little bit better too, but it's great, like in general, like between how many different softwares there are for people to like utilize to do this type of stuff. It's like, it blows my mind really getting into each individual one.
There's so many plugins that you have and so many features and functionality that you can really bake into it. It really brings the open in OBS, you know, the O. But I think that kind of segues nicely into one of the topics of conversation that I wanted to discuss as we sort of introduce ourselves to those who are unfamiliar. When it comes down to content creation and choosing it as our passion, for instance, and thinking like, hey, there's that moment in our lives where we decide, yeah, this is something that I want to try. This is something that I want to do. What for you was kind of that solidifying moment where you decided, yeah, I want to create content. I want a YouTube. I want a Twitch stream or whatever the case was at the time?
There's actually two moments. Early on, I would say probably like late 2000s, like 2009, 2010, when like Call of Duty was like a huge deal on like YouTube, and still kind of is. It's just oversaturated now. There was a lot of creators on there that I was seeing their videos and stuff, and there was a lot of cool things that they were doing in their videos that I did very similar, and like these things would get like millions of views, and I kind of liked that, and I wanted to try to like dabble in it, but I never really got a chance to get all the equipment in order that was required to be able to start. So I really didn't start until, I don't know, maybe like 2012, 2013. But even then, it was just more of a hobby than anything, because I was lucky enough to have a really good job, and a really nice paying job, that is. So I encourage everybody that tries to get into content creation, obviously do it as a hobby. Don't expect much from it in the beginning. The first year or two, some people might viral out early on. You never know. Like there's some really rare occurrences that happens, of course. But starting out regularly, getting to know what your style is and whatnot, that's the best way to go about it. And then like once work got like really busy, I couldn't really do it as often as I wanted to. So I was like here and there. And my girlfriend, who I'm still with, she convinced me actually in 2016, 2017. She was like, what do you want to, like, you know, what do you want to do in life? And I was like, it's kind of like a drunk conversation, but
those heart to heart moments after a bottle of booze.
Yeah. And like she was like, I told her I wanted something in the field of video games. And she was like,
right.
like, you want to go to school for like to make video games? I'm like, no, not like that. And I tried to I had to explain to her like content creation. I showed her like Maximilian Dude. I showed her all the creators and stuff that I was watching at that time. And she's like, this is really cool. Like, what do you need to do this? And I was like, I told her, I was like, I have most of the stuff. I'm just missing a microphone. And the next day she Amazon Primed a microphone to me. It was a blue Snowball, what everybody starts off with.
Yep.
And it took off from there. She was like, you have everything, so there's no excuses now. So full on went ahead
Let's do it.
Yeah, just
right.
Started like making videos. And at first it wasn't like what we do now, which is more informational content. It was like funny gameplay moments with me and my friends and my cousins. And I go back and I actually have all that stuff up still. Like a lot of people say that they remove all their old content, but I don't think so. I think I want to like leave all the cringy old starter stuff up there so that like the humble beginnings, people could go back and see like, you know, where it all started. Like everything is still up there. Even like random videos like I took with my phone and just uploaded to the YouTube channel are still on there.
I have a video actually up until this past December. It was my highest played video on the channel at like 1,400 views. It was nothing, right? And it was a song that I put to a video that a buddy of mine and I did together. And that was kind of like one of the fun things that we would do is we would just make music together anytime that we hung out. And so I uploaded it to the YouTube channel, and that was from 2011. Oh, yeah. And I have a couple of other videos, one from when I was like 18 and another from when I was like 14 that I just happened to still have digitized, you know, and I was like, oh, why not throw those up there too? And all their cringy glory, they're still there. Yeah,
you gotta have that. Everybody's beginning is always going to be cringe no matter what. Even if you try your hardest to not be cringe, it's going to be even more cringe. So
yep. The harder you try,
you got to embrace it, you know. And like for me, a lot of I had some like friends and some family and stuff that was kind of like, you know, what are you doing? This is kind of like lame, you know. And you kind of need that around you, like people to humble you and like mold you to kind of like get better at things, so you figure out like what it is you're trying to do. And eventually I was playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links, and I created a guide on how to like level up faster. Like I found this like this way that you could manipulate, I think it was called the Vagabond in Duel Links. He was like a dude that would appear and he gave you a lot of XP. I found a way to make him always appear and get a lot of XP from him. And I made a video on that, and that did pretty well at the time. Like I had like less than 100 subs, and that video hit like 12K or something like that. And I was like, I was blown away, and I was like, whoa, this is cool. And it started to click that like if you're smaller, if you're like just starting out, informational content, things that people are actively looking for, seeking information or whatever, that's an avenue of content that you should do. I'm not saying that's what you should only do. That's something that you should implement into your rotation on top of like your gameplay stuff and your regular like let's plays and whatnot, and like have the people eventually form a community off of that, and then eventually they'll join in. And you know, I had a lot of inspiration from a lot of channels. Similarly, like, you know, Max wouldn't really do guides all the time. Like I would watch, like I was really big into fighting games, so I also covered fighting games too, and found his channel, I want to say like 2012-ish. And from there, I really started to appreciate fighting games more. And I started to like upload fighting game videos and like how to get better as this character, how to do this, how to beat this character, those types of things. And those started to do well also. And it's just been a really awesome grind to try to like figure out what it is that I can do, like that I enjoy, like as a hobby, and turn it into a a fun hobby at first, but then eventually where it is right now, where it is livable income. So that's
fantastic. Yeah. I think for a lot of creators that ends up being the goal. But what you touched on in the initial part of the statement, where you go into it as a hobby, you set yourself the right expectation. I think that there are some people who look at, giant streamers, think about like Shroud, for instance, or Asmongold, or, people who are like almost independently wealthy now because of their content creation career has earned them a massive amount of money to the point that it's more than they need to live, so to speak. And when we go into any sort of endeavor, I mean, it's the baby steps along the way, the learning experiences. And like you were talking about, where you're not in an echo chamber, you have those voices that kind of compel you or drive you forward or give you that constructive feedback that you need to really like sharpen your skills. Those are the things that are going to help you find your niche, and then find your niche and double down on that niche to be able to make a name for yourself and establish your brand.
Yeah. Yes, for sure, man. And it's an ever growing, evolving aspect that like the content you make, that the content that you start off with is never the content that you that you're going to like continue to make. And that should be the case, like, right? Like you should always try to evolve and do all kinds of different things. Don't try to like put yourself into one box, experiment with different genres, experiment with different forms of content, whatever it is that you want to make. If you have enough passion, if you have enough like drive for that, the work ethic will translate into the content, and the viewers will see that. The viewers will see that, and they respect it, and they love it, and they feel that, this guy is really into this, and he did such a fantastic job with this. I want to like, know more about him, or I want to join the community, or I want to like watch more of this type of stuff. And eventually all that stuff just trickles down, and it really carries into this big picture element, right? Where you eventually get to that point.
Right. The enthusiasm is contagious, though. There are people who really feed off of that. And then that's kind of the thing that stirs something in their heart. And when you think about like content creation especially with live streamers, I think that this is the biggest trapping that I've seen. And even I fell to it too. Doing the thing that's popular because it's popular because you think it's going to get the views. Mm-hmm. But then let's say that you do get popular on that, and you're just going through these motions, creating content that isn't even uniquely you at that point. It's just you doing what you see everybody else doing. And then you get all of these views, and now you have an entire community. You've built an entire audience on what they expect you to be because that's what you've presented them. Yes.
And I ran into that a little early on myself. Because at first, like, I started off with Yu-Gi-Oh! Of all things, and then fighting games. Right. I couldn't ever really retain a community. I didn't understand it. Like, I would make these videos, and I would have videos that would do extremely well and get like hundreds of thousands of views, like Mortal Kombat guides, Dragon Ball guides, Smash Bros guides, but I could never retain a community. I think even till this day, there's probably like 4 or 5 viewers that still actively watch me, that watch me from back then.
Right.
And it's just one of those things that you sort of figure out as you go on. But it wasn't until like FF7, like Final Fantasy 7 Remake, because in 2020, I mean, I guess it kind of helped out as well because everybody was home, everybody's watching YouTube and Twitch and stuff, and sure enough, the channel really like shot up from Remake, and it was like the first like RPG type of like content that I've ever made on the channel. So then I kind of got put, not in a negative way, into a box of like RPGs, and I found myself like whenever I'd play like FF7 or JRPGs or any community recommend RPGs, people would like show up, and a lot of people would be watching that. But then when I want to play something else, like a fighting game or like Smash or something completely different out of the genre, only like not a whole lot of people will show up, and that's fine. Like it's okay, and that's the whole element of this like growing aspect of it, right? You gotta keep diversifying and trying different things. And sure enough, like with Resident Evil and Multiverses, those are 2 other games that I started to like cover as well, and grew big followings off of that too. And it's like a thing that within this field, it can be very comfortable, like doing one thing and getting great, like, amounts of like viewership off of it. But at the same time, you're kind of like, I guess, capping yourself in that way, right? For growth. You kind of want to like stay diverse and keep on trying to like, you have your bread and butter. You're always gonna I could always upload a FF7 video, whatever. but
Right.
you also want to do your other things, grow in other markets, and also develop community for that, right? And
Right.
it's still something that even at the highest level that you'll ever reach, you're still constantly trying to figure out.
I think that it's important for both content creators who are aspiring to any level of success, but also for viewers to recognize that it's not just sitting in front of a PC and playing video games all day. Yes, that is a key facet of it, but most of the work happens behind the scenes. Most of the work happens in the video editor or the collaborations or, you know, the things that you do to continue engagement, or the keen eye, the ever watchful eye that we have to have, sleeping with one eye open for the next idea to kind of like pop in our heads and to be like, okay, I can produce content off of that, or I can try something new to innovate or to evolve. And your primary vertical obviously is Final Fantasy VII. I think that a lot of people recognize you from Final Fantasy VII Remake and then obviously Rebirth, and you covered the mobile game Ever Crisis a good bit as well. But there is, like, if people dig through your videos, there are other videos, including like Pal World, and you did the Silent Hill A Short Message the other day. I think it was maybe a week or so ago. But the point being is that you branch out into these other areas, and when you do that, it's just not as exposed, but it's still valuable to, even if there's low viewership on that. It's still valuable to continue to persist, to continue to innovate, to continue to try something new.
Yeah. But, and you could always get into the stats too and see that, like, for me, I've noticed that it takes 2 to 3 videos on one particular subject to get into that video's like subject algorithm. Like,
interesting.
I
Okay.
noticed
So
with yeah.
a few different tries, and then it'll take, and you'll see the viewership starts to climb.
Yeah, that's how it's always been consistently since Multiverses, I know. Because Multiverses, it took like 10 videos until the 11th video, like all the views came from the browse category instead of search, and it was like skyrocketing in comparison to like search. And same thing for like Resident Evil took 2 to 3 videos, and then I was in that algorithm where, like, okay, people that like Resident Evil stuff that are looking for it will be recommended my content. And a lot of people, they get kind of like discouraged if you upload a video because of I get it, you put a lot of time and effort into it, and when it gets uploaded, it doesn't do as well, and it can be very discouraging. But a lot of times that's the algorithm at work. Like, it's taking its time to really, like, okay, it recommended that content to all your people that watch you for one other thing, and 9 times out of 10 they might not click it, they might not interact with it, and YouTube sees that, and then it's like, okay, we're gonna try recommending it to other people, and it does. And that's where the browse like percentages comes into the, when you look at the analytics as far as like reach and impressions goes. And by the second or third video, you'll notice the numbers continue to like change, and you will show up more and more in those people's algorithms, and you'll continue to grow and find a community for that. And that's how YouTube essentially works. And a lot of it, like you said, behind the scenes stuff, like, a lot of it is hours spent on that, studying data, editing, trying to figure out what the next thing is, like planning your stuff out. Like, it's not an easy job. Content creation is not an easy job, but it is a fun one if you like it, if your heart's in it and you have enough passion for it, and you're willing to continue to grow, take some losses, and expand from that.
It's definitely, for me, I've kind of prefaced it as my love letter to, say, the Monster Hunter community. A lot of my viewers who tune into me are there for the Monster Hunter Wilds theory crafting and news and speculation, and that's kind of where my channel took its roots. And the first couple of videos that I had done on it, it took about 2 days before there was really any viewership whatsoever, because it was very much outside of what I had created previously, where I was just doing kind of like little cinematic gameplay clips from Final Fantasy 16 last year, which was a lot of fun for me, but it was completely outside of the typical realm. But on the notion of Silent Hill, if I could pivot for just a moment, I heard that you're in the market for new glasses.
Oh yeah.
Dude, I showed that short to my wife, and both of us were in stitches, dude. The deflection was on point.
I was like, yo, I just like the glasses. I was a fan, I saw a photo and I was like, yo, I'm gonna get me a pair of that.
Smooth as butter, man. That was fantastic.
Crack me up,
But when it
bro.
comes down to but when it comes down to diversifying, you started off with fighting games, and obviously the clips with your friends, but the fighting games, and then into eventually cutting ground into RPGs. Was that really foreign for you to keep a dialogue or to try to produce relevant information from an RPG versus, say, like an analysis of a fighting game?
It was a challenge, like, and the reason why I ended up going that route was because as I was playing Remake, I was at the time still trying to make videos for Mortal Kombat 11. Not so much, but it was kind of difficult because making a guide can take days. You got to learn the character, be decent with the character, and also teach other people that character. So that content,
Right.
while I do like it, it is very time consuming, and it's pretty hard to kind of develop a community off of that too. So within FF7, I thought my whole thing was I'm gonna upload the Let's Plays of FF7 Rebirth Remake, and when I got to about chapter 4 or 5, and I got the full team, you got Tifa, Barrett, and Cloud.
Right.
I really started to feel the combat system for what it was, and I was like, whoa, this is actually like a fighting game. And I was seeing people's videos at the time, and a lot of people were not uploading. They weren't really breaking down the characters. A lot of people were talking about certain things, but they were missing elements within them that made them unique, and how to actually be OP with them. For example, Tifa's chi trap chi levels. Every time you use unbridled strength, it would level her up, and you can go up 2 levels. Yep. And then she has more combos, more damage, more pressure. Ridiculous. And when you're trying to get the percentage, when you stagger them, right? You're trying to get the damage percentage up to 200% for the achievement and whatnot. That was so much fun, and she's so busted with how you can cancel so many of her moves. I loved that. Yes.
And right before our call too, I was actually I was watching your Sephiroth one because man, he is a straight shooter. It's just constant flurry the entire time.
Overwhelming offense for real. He's just all about being up in the enemy's face and hitting buttons and pressuring them, and his dodge is so good. This dude is once you yes, you could play. They designed the game in a way where you could just button mash and get away with stuff. Yeah.
Right.
But if you take the time to actually learn what each move does, the gameplay gets leveled up entirely. I promise
I love it when it's easy to step into. It's easy to pick up, hard to master.
Yes.
And that's been kind of the love that I have for, say, Monster Hunter combat, where you have a variety of different weapons, 14 different weapons that you can choose from, all with different play styles, all with different unique mechanics, strengths, weaknesses, of course. And the propensity for people to want to go in and just button mash. Sure. You've even got a weapon where you can get away with button mashing. You might not be proficient, but you could still go in there and still have a good time.
Mm-hmm.
But when you get to the upper echelons of the combat, you min-max your build, or you really know how to slot your gems or equip yourself well for a given fight. Oh, it hits that stride, and it's so satisfying to understand the deeper machinations of the way that a game's combat mechanics work.
That's why I'm excited for Wilds, man, because I missed out on World when it came out.
Really?
Yeah, I downloaded it, but I didn't really play it as much. And I honestly, I love the gameplay loop of it, because I've been playing Grand Blue Fantasy Relink recently, and I'm like, man, this is honestly my shit. And when Monster Hunter, when Wilds comes out, I'm definitely going to be hopping on it and playing that for sure.
Oh, fantastic.
I got to that point in Grand Blue where I'm min-maxing everything, and I'm trying to get my 5+ sigils and level them up to the proper levels to cap out. So it's been,
you're on a grind right now.
Yes. It's been suffering, man, because I want to make more GBF videos, but I'm at the same time prepping and planning my schedule out for what the end of this month and then March is going to be like. And it's tough, man, doing this all solo. And eventually I do want to get a team to help me out, but we'll get to that point maybe in the middle of this year.
I like that you called attention to that, is that you're a solo creator. You're a one person shop, as it were. You do the recording, you plan the content, you produce the content, you edit it down, and you release the content.
Yep.
And that sort of a thing, even as you grow, I mean, you're at what, 100 and something thousand subscribers on YouTube, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, that to me is unfathomable. But, you know, like that, even that amount, which is definitely an accomplishment to be proud of, even then it's still not so independently wealthy, for instance, where you would then be able to hire on an entire team to take it to that next level just yet.
Yeah.
So content creation is something that you have to have that passion for and have that labor of love that there's something that ignites that creative spark in you. And don't let me speak for you. I assume it's the same, but tell me your flavor of interpretation. But for me, I identify as a creative, somebody who needs a creative outlet to sustain their mental health. And so without that creative outlet, I find myself stirring. I find myself uneasy. I need to have that outlet. For you, it takes shape like...
For me, it is a little bit of that as well, but at the same time, it's like friendly rivalries, right? Like a lot of my friends, and like I have a lot of friends that do like the same type of like content I do, but like the same like genre, like FF7 and stuff like that, right? But like I always think it's good to like motivate each other creatively. So like if I see my friend doing this type of video, I'll like tell him like, oh, you kind of like you should have did this as well, and like talked about this. And then I'll do like my version of it and like show them type of thing. It's like, it's sort of like there is the creativeness of it and how much higher you could take it, right? Not making like the best possible video, because I recently just did that Sephiroth guide, and I know it wasn't like my best video of like guide content that I could have done, but I was just having fun and learning the character live, and I was like, oh, I could chop this up and make this into a video. And I've gotten comments from people where they told me like, hey, this is some people were mean, but like some people were like, hey, this person's video is better than yours, you should have did this and stuff. And I'm like, hey, yo, I mean, that's great that they made a great video. I'm happy for them, but you know,
right,
it kind of like motivated me. So like now Wednesday, it's a wrap. I'm going ham on that demo. And I'm showing people the sauce, and I'm going back to like the 2020 version of me, which, going back into that first question, I forgot to finish answering that, but it was like those guides I did early on, like the Cloud, Tifa, and Barrett like combat guides, how to get into those characters. That was like chapter 5 of Remake, and when like playing the game and seeing like how they function like a fighting game, like a versus tag team fighting game, I was like, I need to break this down and turn that into a guide. And I did it like a fighting game guide would be. Like I made combo notations, like so you have to hit square 5 times right here, then press triangle right before this animation. Like I was going that much into detail with the guide, and people really did like that. I didn't do that for the Sephiroth guide recently.
I noticed. I wasn't going to say anything on that. I noticed, but it was still informative for me at least.
Thank you. But going forward, it's one of those things, like as you continue to grow, you'll find that, okay, you take a little bit of shortcuts here and there just for the sake of like making the workflow a little bit easier. Because at that time I stayed up till like 5 a.m. editing that actually. And I was like, maybe I should put like combo notations on the screen, and I'm like, nah, I'm not gonna do it. Like they'll understand. They'll see me like talking about it in the video, and some people did, some people didn't, and it is what it is. But you got to get that the feedback and comments can sometimes really help elevate the content even more, because hey, like this is not your best work, you could do better. I agree. And I'll go back and, you know, when the next opportunity, the next video comes out, I'll just knock it out of the park like we always do, type of deal.
Right. You're never going to produce 100% of your videos at 100% of your capacity, right? Like you're never always going to be on your A game. That's just part of humanity, man. You know, like, but I think that the great part about that is kind of like the lifelong learner approach. Like, okay, you know what? I'm open to this feedback and I can see where you're coming from. The other flip side of that, of course, is the comments that really don't bring anything constructive to the conversation. They're just hating on you. And you know what? You got to take those knocks too as a person in this sort of space. You got to have a thick skin. But there have been a couple of comments that I've had in my videos where people have disagreed with my point, or, you know, taken issue or exception with some of the ideas that I brought up. And you know what? That's fine. But my idea is that I want us to converse about it. I want us to talk about it.
That's how it should be.
I 100% agree. And I think that even disagreeing doesn't mean that there needs to be hostility. And there have been so many good comments and conversations where I've built out entire videos like, I remember talking to this person on that in the comments. That's a really great idea. What can I do to run with that? And that was the inspiration for like my next video or the next idea to come up with or the next thought or script that I wanted to write.
I always tell people, like other creators too, like if you forget to talk about something or you miss something in a video, don't get like worried about it or feel like you need to take it down and redo that video. Make a follow-up video. That's just room for another video afterwards where you could talk about more content at the end of the day. Yeah. And just being 100% transparent with everybody on the process. Like, hey, I completely missed this. Like, I remember there was one time I made a video about this, I forgot what it was, but they made an announcement on Twitter about it. And while I was editing the video, uploading it and everything, the announcement, I hadn't seen it on Twitter, which is why I keep Twitter open now when I edit it, just to make sure I see everything.
I got you.
And I uploaded the video. It was already there. And people were like, hey, you should check Twitter in the comments. And I'm like, fuck.
Oh, no. Of course, while you're editing your video.
Mm-hmm. Yep. While it's happening,
man.
The universe knew.
That's going to be an interesting thing for me because I've never had to center my releases around an info drop before. And now for Wilds, Gyoza Tsujimoto did do a like New Year's update, so to speak, where I was like, okay, I definitely want to cover this. I want to commentate on this. And I more or less in a day threw together a video that was completely unstarted. That was a grind. But the upcoming updates, I mean, next month for Monster Hunter is going to be the 20th anniversary of the series, which, I mean, that's a lot of longevity right there. I know Capcom's going to be bringing something in. Summer is when we're expecting, at some point, probably June, but we're expecting the next trailer or maybe even a release date or hopefully pre-orders open. And then probably something more to substantiate that later on in the year, whether it's September or even at the Game Awards. And so I'm kind of like filling out time between each of the info drops. That
was me with Rebirth and then Resident Evil as well. It's like you're updating the community, you're updating people on like what to expect, right? Like for example, the 20th, you said 20th anniversary is coming up.
Yeah.
So you just updating them, let them know, hey, this is what you can expect. This is what I hope to see. And then as time gets closer and you do get like the information availed, you can kind of like make a follow-up video on that and talk to them like, hey, look, this is what was announced. This is what's so significant about it. This is why it's a good news in general. There's so many different avenues in which you could take the news aspect of content creation that it's very interesting how many different angles you could really go with it.
Yeah, if you stop and think about it, not just what your initial impression might be, although you could do an initial impression video and make content out of that too.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about like as taking it from as many angles as possible, I mean, you're going to find just by virtue of other people creating out there how many different perspectives could be represented from the same information.
Yes, for sure. Like there's a lot of times when I saw, like, for example, like if I see like a trailer and it says PlayStation 5 exclusive until this date, that immediately means, oh my god, that's when PC version is coming out.
Right. Yep.
But some for some people they might see it as other things, like, oh, maybe they have other content planned, maybe they're gonna go on another console or platform, and I'm like, nah, that's when PCs come.
The PC release. We're all looking forward to playing it on Steam. Well, I don't know. Maybe they'll go Epic Store again with Rebirth.
I wonder.
And then go to Steam. They did that with Remake initially, and I was like, I don't really want to buy it on Epic. I want to buy it on Steam. So I bought it on Epic anyway, and then I bought it on Steam again after having had the collector's edition on PS4.
Yeah. Man, that version was so much better, man. The frames, the cancels you could do in that, the lighting and stuff, like it really elevated the gameplay a lot. And judging from what I played so far in the demo of like Rebirth, it's just things are looking really good, really good.
Yeah.
I saw like so there's actually, it was my last stream. We were crossing the bridge right before the bridge gets struck by the lightning and you fall into the water, right?
Right.
I paused the camera and they have the photo mode in there. So I turned the camera to the left and I was showing my chat. I was like, you could see the town. You could see Nibelheim down there. You could see the mansion.
But if you look to the really,
yeah, but if you look to the left, there's a Moogle house right there. It looks like it's a giant mushroom head. Like it just looks so out of place, but it shows how cool and open the areas are for this for this game to be able to show that. Like it's so fascinating to me, and I can't wait to see what more we could see in that. Like if you're in a certain town, you could full on see in the distance a whole another area that you can't access yet, but eventually when you will, you can see all those things that are currently existing on that platform or on that plane.
I think that a lot of people forget that our definition of open world back in like the 90s was literally when you walked out of Midgar, for instance, in Final Fantasy VII, and that was the open world. You know, there wasn't a whole lot of...
Yeah, it's definitely evolved over time, yeah.
Oh, man. Oh, but I am hype. And the way that an open world has taken shape lately, I mean, there's a lot of conversations around Wilds being an open world, for instance, which would be totally good for Capcom, in my opinion, to make that move. But in respect to where things have come with Final Fantasy VII, if you've played the OG, you know that you're not really traversing. You're just kind of walking across a flat world map. And fair. But to bring it up to scratch and up to the standards of today, where when we think open world, we have a very different connotation in our head with a lot of different expectations that kind of come along with it. Do you think that there may be some overhyped expectations with such a high profile release and a very beloved title for a lot of core Final Fantasy and JRPG gamers, that there might be the propensity for us to be overhyping ourselves and looking at it with either rose tinted glasses or too high of an expectation?
I think there definitely is a possibility for that. I mean, myself, I'm in a different boat where I was full on doubting them before the release date was announced in September. I was like, there's no way it's going to be like open world. Actually, that was Summer Games Fest. I was like, there's no way it's going to be open world. It's going to be, I felt like it was going to be chapter to chapter based. And it was like one chapter is going to take place in another town. And then they'll push you to the next town for the next chapter. Like you won't be able to control any aspect of it. And
like Crisis Core then.
Yes, that's what I was thinking that, right? Because Remake didn't really give me a whole lot of like hope in that sense. But playing what I played in the demo of October, when Square Enix invited me to play the open area of like Junon, I was like, dude, this is way more than what I thought it was going to be, and it's such a really good feeling, right? It's such a really, I can't describe it. Where like I'm a generally positive person, right? But I don't like to get let down, so I kind of like had my expectations really low, and then they were kind of just like, it blew my mind. I'm like, whoa, they're actually doing that? Like
it's ambitious, and it definitely puts to perspective, I think, just how much of an undertaking this really was.
I mean, there is going to be people, there is going to be people that like that obviously come from like the way that Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom is, and that's like open world at its finest. Like you can literally go
so good
anywhere you want, climb whatever you want. That's like the openest world that's ever opened before.
I love that. Can I quote you on that?
Yes.
All right, perfect.
So there's a lot of people that are going to be coming from that aspect,
right.
and with that lens on, look at Rebirth and say, okay, well, what the hell? It doesn't have this or that, whatever, right? But that's still left to be determined when the game drops and we get to see like what else you can do within the world, because it's not necessarily about, to me, the world being completely open and doing whatever you want. It's like, how many fun things are there to do in this world where it makes traversing and roaming around this area feel enjoyable, right? So that's what I'm looking forward to the most.
I would rather have fun than be right.
Yeah.
And I mean, it makes a lot of sense to me in the space of theory crafting, right? Like all of my takes could be the worst takes in the world. I could be wrong about literally everything. But if Capcom, for me, delivers a fun product and a game that everybody enjoys, and I'm the absolute minority in my criticisms, but I'm having a good time too, then okay, like money well spent at that point. It's more important that as a game, we're enjoying this together and experiencing it together as a community.
It's a win. It's a win at the end of the day,
Oh,
man.
absolutely.
It's like, you know, we forget, like, we play these games like to have fun. Some people used to play them as an escape from like the world to go into another world and all of that, right? But like if you're having fun, if you're enjoying what it is that's on screen and what it is that you're doing, I think ultimately that's a win.
Oh, for sure. And I know that with AAA gaming, there's definitely a stigma that's kind of attached to that now, especially with a lot of the proliferation, of, you know, micropayment transactions, day one patches. There's just a lot of people who are like, I don't even feel like I should pre-order a game, even if I know that it's from SquareEnix or even if I know that it's from Capcom. I'm worried that I'm going to get burned again. But I think that the testament, especially for SquareEnix and especially for Capcom, is in their track record. They've really devoted a lot to the quality of Final Fantasy VII, both in Remake and Rebirth now, and then whatever the third game ends up being. And Capcom as well, whether it's the portable team or the mainline team that have been producing the game. For me, I mean, knowing the release pattern, right? Usually it's about 6 to 9 months from announce to release for Capcom for one of their Monster Hunter games. This is 2 years. So for me, that tells me they want to get this right, and they've undertaken a lot to really evolve the game and the franchise as a whole and to move it forward in an innovative and fun direction. I have a lot of faith in that. It's just in the same way.
Yeah, because the Monster Hunter World is Capcom's highest selling property, right? Like highest selling,
Yes.
like most selling copies, I believe.
Right, which is huge. It was unprecedented, right? And then think about Square Enix, right? What was the year of announce? It was 2015 for Remake, right?
Yep.
Yeah, 5 years.
That's like tradition at this point.
Yeah, right, because it's been another 4 years till Rebirth. For you, when you saw the announcement for Final Fantasy VII Remake, that was probably predating your interest in creating content for it by a long shot, I'm imagining.
For sure, yeah.
Were you hype?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember watching E3 like on my phone, walking at the job that I worked at the time. I was working at a commission. I was a commission salesman, and I'm like over here like watching it on my phone, walking around the store, and we had like earpieces and walkie-talkies, and like my boss was like, "Hey, what are you doing? Like, get off your phone." And I'm like, "No, I'm not on my phone." And I closed my booklet, and I'm just like watching in the corner, just like roaming around the store trying to hide. And I see the Buster sword, and I just started losing my shit. And
yes,
I was like, I need to take a break. So,
gotta go, boss. Bye. That's fantastic. How was it for you then, knowing that there was probably going to be a similar timeline once Remake came out until we got to see part 2? They promised that it was underway and that they've set a lot of the framework to speed along development.
mm-hmm.
I don't think that we were anticipating that they were making the second and third part almost sequentially, or excuse me, not sequentially. When they both happened at the same time. I can't remember the word for it at the moment. But
Simultaneous?
Simultaneously, thank you.
Yeah.
So 4 years, though, until we saw Remake. How is that wait for you?
Oh, man. It feels weird to say right now. It feels like... It's like when you're waiting, right? When you're like, say, back in like 2020, 2021, it feels like it was taking forever. But now that it's here,
Right.
For some weird reason, it feels like time flew. I don't know how to describe that. I don't know why it feels that way, but it's just because we're reaching that ending point, and everything from 2020, the hype, the news, the rumors, the leaks, the updates, everything that we've talked about that our channel covered in the past, it's just finally coming to this release. And I wasn't making content on it like when Remake came out, so this is like a special moment for me now, like doing this with Rebirth now. It's just, it feels like a whole crazy new experience, you know? And like Square Enix is always going to do that thing where they announce a game way too early.
No.
Yeah, that's just what they do, man. I mean, look, Kingdom Hearts 4 was announced in 2021, was it, or 2022?
Kingdom Hearts 3 was in development hell for an age.
Yes. It's just,
so
Hey man, I mean, it's tradition. It's an unfortunate one, but man, I was hoping with 16, and I hope with 16, like Yoshi P said he wanted to make an example out of Square and like say like, okay, we're changing this up. We're announcing games not too far from release. And unfortunately 16 ended up having a delay also. But
yep, it did. And the day one patch, even though he was like, I'm trying my best to make sure that doesn't happen.
Even Rebirth is having a day one patch too, technically. That's the patch on Wednesday to fix the performance mode.
Yep. So when I played it on performance mode, obviously pre-patched because this is before that patch goes live. But and I'm like, this really looks a bit like a smudgy mess. I'm kind of shocked. I hope that this isn't. It must be because it's the demo. And I kind of dismissed it at that and shrugged my shoulders and whatnot. And then when I saw your video making that comparison between the performance mode and what that looks like visually versus the graphics mode, and I'm like, oh man, that's a drastic difference.
Yeah, huge, man. And I mean, Digital Foundry was the one that figured out that it's a post-processing error or like a bug that they're having with it. I don't know how long Square Enix has been aware of this issue, and I hope it doesn't hurt like reviewers like scores. I hope they take into consideration that like, hey, like there is a patch for it. Yeah, it won't be reflected in the footage, but that's something that they fix, type of deal. Assuming the patch is good.
Well, given the content creator's dilemma, where you're creating a video that you've already pretty much all but produced and you're getting it done in the editor, and then you get news of the patch dropping, well, you still got a video that you got to release. I hope that they tack on something acknowledging that, at least saying, hey, that this is pre-patch footage and this is what my piece or my thoughts or my criticisms may be leveraged against. But even Final Fantasy 16, when that came out, there was horrific amount of motion blur. And so they ended up patching that. I forget the number of the patch, like 1.3 maybe it was. I remember doing a TikTok on that where I did a comparison with the motion blur on and the motion blur off, and for me, I was so happy. The amount of clarity that afforded me, as opposed to everything kind of look like a smudged mess every time I pan the camera.
Yes, man. I kind of hope like in the future, Square Enix in general as a company, like these games, they're not easy to make. They take a very long time to make, and that's why like sometimes they announce these things early or too early sometimes. But I would hope that they could launch a game that doesn't have drastic issues, because each one over the last however many releases they've had has had issues. Like 15 had its issues, 16 definitely had its issues, and 7 has a minor one, but hopefully that's the only one and a simple fix at that. But I see the company trending in a better direction at least, so I'm hoping that this whole like 5 years from announce to release thing is just like a thing that is done in the past. And quite frankly, I mean, I know that the history with it, like the announcement, and then it was CyberConnect 2 working on it, and then they pretty much let CyberConnect 2 go and brought it in-house, I think in 2017 for them to work on it. So then technically it was like a 3-year cycle from 2017 to 2020 when it released. And so
the announcement was still out there for 2 whole years.
Yes. And they said something about like the quality or like the project that it wasn't where they thought it would be in their hands, so they brought it in-house to work on it. And I think it was a good call at the end of the day, because now with Rebirth, I think it's very possible that with all that they've learned, all that they've developed, and the assets and stuff that they use from like Remake over to Rebirth, I think at the end of the day, it's going to make Part 3 even better, because they have so much already set. Like with the way that the world is, all you really have to implement after that is the Wutai continent, right? Because they said Wutai is coming in Part 3, and it's not going to be in this one. And air travel with the High Wind. I think that and on top of that, there's all kinds of other stuff I don't really want to get into, like as far as like the third disc of like, or the second disc of FF7 original goes. But
you don't have that entire notepad back open that you want to pull up, you know, with all the things that they
when I closed it, I clicked don't save.
Hold on, let me go back to your video. It's on there somewhere. But you know what I mean? Like they have a lot of content to create, a content to still explore yet.
Yes.
That's not going to be represented in Rebirth. The thing is that, and the devs, I forget which spokesperson mentioned this, but they are concerned that they've set the bar so high for themselves. How are they going to then trump even that? You know, I get it. Okay, Vincent's not going to be playable. Okay, that's a bummer. Sid's not going to be playable. Still a bummer. You got to hold some things back for people to look forward to, and I understand that. But I mean, as far as the content's going to be concerned, for them to continue to one up themselves, so to speak, to have that natural progression, so you have that final climax, and it's just a payoff, and the trilogy kind of like bookends itself. That's not a position that I would want to be in as a developer or you know, any sort of creative.
I would hope that obviously with them, because they've said recently that the main scenario, right, of like their outline of how the storyboard is going to go, they have that pretty much squared away. The rest of it is just developing it, right?
Piecing it together.
Putting it all together, making it all actually like cohesive. I would hope that with the amount of, I guess I would say, again, I'm not a developer, but I feel like with having those assets already in place and the world and essentially all that stuff, right? It shouldn't take as long as it did to make Rebirth and Remake. If anything, it could take, I think it'll take 3 years, closer to 3 years for us to see it.
That's a sweet spot for me. Okay.
Yeah. I think 3 years is a good idea to think of for when we get to see it come back out. 2 years, I'd be blown away. I'd be blown away if it's like 2 years. I would love it. And
I would be shocked.
We'll just have to wait and see. But I think that they have a great roadmap ahead of them for the planning of like part 3, so that the development time won't be too crazy long, and then the fans and the community in general don't have to wait too long either.
It's one of the things that I like to study when it comes down to like dev cycles, or at least patterns in the dev cycle. For me, I kind of have to draw on that in a lot of my opinion pieces and theory crafting videos, because I can only look in retrospect and then draw conclusions from that to be able to support my argument.
Yeah.
But when we're talking about like Final Fantasy VII Remake and the missteps and learning experiences along the way, how that set themselves up for success, and they're now kind of like they're cooking right now with Rebirth and then with the third installment. For me, what I saw was in Capcom's development, where take World, for instance, where World took the whole notion of openness. It's not a fully open, it's like a quasi-open world in the same way that Final Fantasy 16 was, right? But each environment and each biome was really lush. It was very vibrant. They were very committed to the authenticity ecologically, but also the hunter's experience and navigation within it. It was a real step forward in the mobility and agency for the player. For me, if we're assuming right where Wilds is going to be open world, they're going to crank that dial right up to 11. So I'm anticipating that there's going to be some really great advancements and evolutions as they iterate sort of on their learning experiences in world. But what they learned in world was groundbreaking for them. And now they have this that they can then build off of in a really incredible way. They're not setting the groundwork for new navigation. They're building off of what they've already accomplished.
Amazing.
I love it. Oh, I'm so hyped.
That makes me so excited to get into it, man. Like, it really does, because I remember Monster Hunter on PSP, and I remember playing it, and I'm like, this is cool. Like, I'm not really too into it. And then when World came out, I'm hearing nothing but how amazing World is, and I'm just like, this is kind of cool. And I've watched some like videos of like people playing it and getting through it and stuff, and it literally has that game loop that I think that I would absolutely love, because I come from like an MMO background, and I love like the min-maxing aspect of MMOs and the co-op nature of like Monster Hunter Wilds and World. I'm really excited for it, and I think that with them announcing like a 2 years ahead of release, that's, like you said, a statement that like, yo, this is going to be bigger. It's going to be taking all the things that we did properly with the original title that everybody loved, and we're going to enhance that even further in ways that people would not be able to expect or have always dreamed of.
I think for them, they understand that stakes are high, similarly to how SquareEnix now with Rebirth setting the bar so high. The stakes are high for Capcom too. I mean, this is their crowning achievement, right? So for them to topple that success, the absolute behemoth that is Monster Hunter World, they got their shoes, they got their work cut out for them and big shoes to fill.
Yeah.
So for you in Rebirth, though, and I assume that you have perhaps some insider knowledge, but just out of the understanding of what Rebirth is going to cover, what are you just personally most excited for in Rebirth?
Most excited for in Rebirth, in general, the thing that I love about FF7 are the characters. Like these, I played this game when I was young, and I grew up playing this game, and like I feel like these characters are like people that I've grown up with, and like seeing them interact with each other in Remake did things to me that like it made me like emotionally feel the relationships, even more than I had like when I was younger. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that and experiencing that in Rebirth, because we're going to be roaming around with everybody all together at all the same times, and just the back and forth, the dialogue, and just the things that each of these characters say to each other, how the relationships feel real. I'm 100% anticipating like consuming that and just losing myself in it. Like I already asked my chat, I was like, are you guys okay with me uploading like 4-hour-long episodes?
What'd they say?
They were like, yes. And I'm like, okay, cool. That's what we're going to do. Because it's nerve-wracking, to edit a Let's Play. And like, there's some people that over-edit and do all these crazy things with it. And sometimes that could just be, it's hard. It's hard to do that. And like, sometimes the return on it isn't so well. So I asked my viewers, like, would you guys want to see like my raw like reaction to it? Like, I will do side stuff, but I'm not going to cut like too many things out. They're like, yes, please. Like 4 hours per episode. I'm like, not two, that. Four is good. All right.
God
shoot.
Damn. Okay. All right, let's go. Say less.
So I'm just so excited, man. There's just so much that I just can't wait to see. And of course, Cosmo Canyon. That was one of my favorite places. Like when I was a kid, the Cosmo Canyon aspect of like the Red 13's relationship and how his character evolves and like continues to grow. And it's so exciting. This whole, like, just being able to see all of this existing and being real.
It does. It puts a whole new depth and dimension to it. And now I knew that I loved Final Fantasy VII. There was a demo that was released for PC, and I think it was like 95. I was like 7 or 8 years old at the time, so I was quite young. And it went through the North Coral flashback, and that was pretty neat. I found myself kind of like wondering about it, like, what was that game? And then my next door neighbor got a PlayStation, and then it had the demo disc for Final Fantasy VII for that, which was the first reactor that the bombing mission. And I'm like, oh wow, that is really cool. This whole Final Fantasy VII thing, that's neat. It wasn't until years later that I finally got the full game, and I mean, I just fell head over heels in love with it. I loved the music, I loved the environments. I mean, at the time, the graphics are great. I mean, it was just a really groundbreaking experience. And of course, I had played the original Final Fantasy on NES way back in the day too, because I loved Nintendo games as a kid. And then what you were saying, and I love this, just seeing the characters kind of come alive in a way that is so human. It just adds that depth of complexity to their humanity that you don't get to see. And I know that some people really don't like the humanization of Sephiroth, but I absolutely adore it because it gives depth to his character.
Yes, we need that. Like, instead of him just being like this, like, yes, he's a badass. Yes, he's terrifying. Show us a little bit more of the normal aspects of him before he gets to that point, and let us feel for him as a character. I feel like the best villains are the ones that you can understand why they descend into the madness that they've fallen into. And a lot of times the villains are, when you hear their backstory, they're very relatable. It's very hard to relate to Sephiroth before.
He just seemed like egomaniacal and stone cold and calculating, and it didn't really set up the premise, I think, in a believable way anyway, for all of his reaction. Like, why did he have such a volatile emotional reaction when he got to Genova at the Nibelheim reactor? Why did he care? It didn't seem personified enough for me to really understand his pain or even relate to what this must mean for him as a child.
Yeah. And I always wondered myself, right? Like, this is one thing why I like Ever Crisis too, is like they have the first soldier like story elements, and when Sephiroth is introduced, he's talking with the party at the time, and he's young. He's like, I don't know how old he is, maybe 13, 14. And
oh, wow.
They're asking him, do you have any parents? And he's like, I only know. And he showed a photo of his mother. He's like, have you seen this woman before? And it's a photo of Lucrezia, which is his actual mom.
His mother.
But Jenova, but Hojo, being a fucking asshole that he is, told him that her name is Jenova.
Wow. So he actually... Did he really? No.
Yeah. If you go and you look at it, man, it makes you hate Hojo even more, because it's like, why would you do that to him? He's like, he has this photo of Lucrezia, and it's her, looking in her lab coat, looking at the camera, and he tells them, I was like, oh, she's beautiful. What's her name? He's like, her name is Jenova. Apparently, she's my mom. I've never met her before, and so like little things like that, it's kind of like, oh shit.
Right. What a walking mass of complexes, Hojo.
Yep.
Oh, he's such a problem too. I feel like so many of the events and catastrophes, like, I mean, we wouldn't have a story, obviously, if you didn't, but so much of it could have been avoided. So much of the tragedy and the tragic backstory that befell so many of our beloved characters in Final Fantasy VII would not have happened if you were just like happened to fall in front of a moving truck.
Yes. And man, that's the thing that it works with so well with Hojo. Like you're supposed to hate him. You're not supposed to sympathize with him. So you give us even more reasons to hate him and think he's a worthless like bag of shit. And then like Sephiroth,
I mean, he's doing a good job.
Yes. And then Sephiroth, you kind of like, now you're kind of like, oh man, like you feel bad. Like, damn, this is what he had to deal with. This is how he was raised with these thoughts, and I just love it. I love it so much. Like, I'm a big Metal Gear Solid fan, so like playing through like Big Boss's story and seeing why things unfold the way they do. Like Metal Gear Solid 3 is one of my favorite games of all time. If I could honestly say, like Final Fantasy 7 is my favorite game of all time, Metal Gear Solid is my favorite series of all time. Sure. And I love those games. I love the way that the story is set up, and with Part 3 being a prequel, I was very disappointed when I was young because I wanted to see more of like Raiden and Solid Snake's story. But 3 immediately became my favorite game once I played through it, consumed everything about it, because there's so much lore in that game and so much like extra details that it just blew my freaking mind when you get to the end and you realize why things are the way they are. And it's just like, oh man, I would do the same thing. I could totally relate to that.
They made Big Boss. And the whole way that they turned him against his mentor, not like they brainwashed him by any stretch of the imagination. He knew exactly what he had to do. And then for him to become the legacy for the boss and carry on her vision thereafter, I mean, you can see, to what degree it broke his heart to have to do this. And for him being this grizzly guy, I mean, he's out there, in the woods feeding off of crocodiles, for instance, and pulling leeches off of them. Yeah. But you start to see the human element. And I think that that's really important when building a narrative device. Yes. Now, when we're talking about narrative devices, a lot of good games, I think, really bake them into mechanics. And there's one thing that I couldn't help but spot in your background, where narrative devices are so intrinsically linked to the mechanics of the game that the majority of the combat and dungeon crawling element isn't even narrative, it's the social links. Talk to me about Persona.
Say that one more time, sorry. About Persona?
Persona. Is that a Persona box in the background?
Right behind me, yeah.
There it is. Persona 3 Reload. Okay, so I've been just consuming it voraciously. And tell me how much time have you spent in that?
You're gonna laugh.
Okay.
0.
I did laugh. Okay. Called me out on that one. Got it.
So all right. So here's the thing. I've purchased Persona 5 3 times. I purchased it when it was out on PS4. I purchased the Royal Edition, right?
Yep.
And then I bought it again on PC recently.
Okay.
And I made a point to, because when I played it, man, I did not have enough time at all to get into it. I played probably like an hour of the game.
It's an investment.
It is.
It really is.
I heard it's like one of the toughest games to stream.
for reasons not entirely because it's boring, but because it's very
demanding,
like very dense.
There's a lot of stuff in there, you know, and it's there's a lot of things you could miss. And so I made it a point to get into P3, and I reached out to Atlas. They were nice enough to they actually, I just wanted a code. They were nice. They sent me a box too, and I was like, yo, this company's amazing. Like, I appreciate them for that. So I said I was gonna do it this month, but man, the way that this month unfolded, it was way too much shit happening. I was not able to do. I was gonna do a first time ever playing Persona, like stream, like playing P3, going through it, and here the bits in here and there, like not really recording or like uploading and streaming everything, but just like playing it, getting into it with the chat, and then as the weeks go on, continue to do that. I didn't end up doing that. I still plan to do that, but it's gonna have to be something that I probably start late March, with just how much like content I have ahead of me to like work on. But that's going to be its own thing where like I get into P3 and then P5 and even P4. I heard P4 is also like on PC as well.
Yeah, get into Persona that 4 one. Golden. Yep.
Yeah, I wanna, because I've heard nothing but amazing things. Like my cousins, my family, and stuff have been talking my ear off nonstop since P5 came out about how it's like the best like turn-based game of all time. So yeah, it did a lot to move the series forward. And the hallmarks of those advancements from Persona 5 are definitely all over Persona 3 Reload. Now, I had played Persona 3 FES back in like 2008. I think I did. I got that and I played it on PS2. And I clocked probably 110 hours in that. And I wasn't a completionist run by any stretch. That was me just trying to take my time, level up enough. I had to do a lot of grinding to be able to get to the higher levels of Tartarus, and then to also level up social links. They did a lot to really streamline just like quality of life updates, I think. Nice. So it's not just a fresh coat of paint, although that coat of paint be nice and shiny. The menus look fire, bro. Oh my god, the aesthetics of the game are just uncanny. So without giving too much away, the just your relationships with other characters really come to life. They're mechanically integrated into your success in the game. And so as you start to get closer to these characters and whatnot, as you know, a mechanical device, it's also furthering the narrative, and it's also bringing you as a person, as a player, closer to these characters too. There is so much life and class and flavor to Persona 3 Reload. I really think you're in for a treat. Oh, I'm excited for it, man. I can't wait. It's just fantastic. I feel so like I'm so upset at myself because there were so many things that happened in the beginning months of like February, between like I had a friend and his wife come and visit, and we spent that weekend with them, and then the week after that was my birthday and Super Bowl, and then like preparing for like the demo of Rebirth, and then like content, and like getting all my like days like planned out, and like now here I am. I'm like, oh my god, can I start it this week? I don't think I can. I mean, whenever you get to it, it's just, I'm confident that it's an experience. I mean, it's turn-based, obviously, so it's not like Final Fantasy VII where, you know, we're talking like active, for instance. Yeah. But when we're talking about core JRPG experiences and throwing in that sort of slice of life, almost dating sim-esque mechanics along with randomized dungeon crawling, I think that there's just a lot there to appreciate that you'll really enjoy sinking your teeth into once you're able to dedicate the time to it. I'm excited because I love turn-based as well. Like, I mean, I grew up on FF7, and then I played FF8, 9, and 10, like back to back to back. And then Parasite Eve is another like big favorite game of mine. And nice. I really would love to see it get a remake or come back in some way. Remaster, please. Like, we haven't seen anything since Third Birthday. No, we haven't. And I thank God I avoided that game. So like back then, I had a business where I would hack PSPs, and that's how I ended up playing Crisis Core, where like I was somebody had asked me, hey, can you put this game on my PSP? And I went and I downloaded it, and I'm like, FF7 Crisis Core, what the fuck is this?
Right.
So I put it on his and I put it on mine, and I'm like playing it, and I'm like, what? This dude got his own game, and I'm playing through it, and that was my experience of Crisis Core. I think it was around a time when it had just came out too, 08 maybe.
Wow.
So I was doing that, and I kept seeing like, third birthday, but like it never got any good reviews. So I'm like, I'm not even gonna bother downloading it, because the last thing I want to do is like get angry or like depressed. Because like I love Ayabria, she's like one of my favorite characters of all time, and like to see and like all the things people have said about Third Birthday and what it does to her character and what it does to the story, it's kind of like I really don't want to experience that. I rather just
right.
And I hear the same thing from a lot of people. Like when I play PE1 and PE2 on stream, people were like, have you played Third Birthday? I'm like, no. They're like, Jesus Christ, you're blessed.
Okay. All right. So you dodged a bullet on that one, I guess.
Apparently.
Oh, buddy. There are so many games that I would love to see remade too. I mean, one that you enjoy using a song from its soundtrack is Chrono Trigger.
Oh, yes. Yes.
I would love to see Square Enix give it the Final Fantasy VII remake treatment. I mean, what a masterclass that game was in 16-bit RPG. Just
hell yeah.
Phenomenal.
It inspires till this day too, like the whole synergy system and Rebirth is pretty much like dual text and like triple text and stuff. And it's just one of those elements in RPGs like that. When you play that game, it's I love the way that they utilize the time travel as a mechanic to expand quests, to expand the story. I think that was really what like blew my mind, because I already love the combat, I already love the music, I love the characters. Like, I'm a big Dragon Ball fan too, so it's like Akira Toriyama, like I saw that and I was like, why is Trunks Super Saiyan 4? That looks cool.
Oh man. But you love these aspects of our childhood, and now we're in, I guess, this generation of nostalgia, right? The nostalgia generation, where a lot of devs are now kind of catering to that with their remakes or reimaginings or their remasters. And to see something like that, the love that we have for earlier games in our childhood, like Parasite Eve or Chrono Trigger, for instance, to get that same sort of love. I mean, that would be, if that happened before I died at some point in time, I'd probably die a happy man.
Why stop there? Let's go for Xenogears too.
Oh no, one or two? Both?
Xenogears only has the one, right? Because like there's Xenosaga, and those have like sequels, and then there's Xenoblade as well. Xenogears was it's a Square Soft RPG that came out around the same time as FF7. I think it came out in 97 or 98. I'm not too sure, but
yeah,
its disc 1 was its disc 2 was like, I guess they ran out of like budget. Like they had to like really cut a lot of corners, and a lot of content in disc 2 is like really done poorly, where it's just like a slideshow.
It's rushed.
And it's very rushed. Like the character sits down in a chair and kind of explains to you what happened, and it's like, why can't I play that? Like, that sounds cool. I want to do that.
It was a really great game, and in fact, if I'm not mistaken, in the development process, that was originally what Final Fantasy VII was going to be. And then they kind of like scrapped the idea and then made it into Xenogears. But Yasunori Mitsuda, who did the score for Chrono Trigger, Chrono Cross, and Radical Dreamers, was the composer to that. So like A Small of Two Pieces just touches my heart in a very special way. And the soundtrack to that game was absolutely phenomenal. My one claim to fame in this whole thing was back earlier when Twitter was much smaller than it was. Yasunori Mitsuda had a Twitter, and I tweeted at him and said, "I'm a big fan of yours," in my broken Japanese. And he literally tweeted back and literally just said, "Thank you so much."
That's awesome, man. That's such a great feeling.
Yeah, it was.
Happy for you.
I was so happy.
Oh, that's great, dude.
Hey, but
man. I feel like we're in this era where a lot of people are complaining that like games are getting like there's no new IPs coming out. There's just remakes. There's remakes, and as far as movies goes too, there's movies remake. Like there's a lot of people are like creatively bankrupt. But am I selfish about it for like liking it when it comes to like the video game aspect?
That's a really good question, because there definitely are concerns about creative bankruptcy. If there's not anything really new, have we explored the entirety of our creative depth as a species in the frontier of video gaming? I don't think that we are.
Right.
But to answer the question that you asked, I genuinely love it for myself as well, because it takes me back to a place when times were simple. I mean, I don't necessarily know how old you are, but at least how old I was when I grew up, we still understood what it was like to go out in the backyard and have an adventure in our nothing but our mind and imagination with our friends, and then to come back in for dinner, and sit down in front of the TV with the family, that sort of a thing, where we interacted with each other face to face.
Yep.
There's a lot that's changed since then, so that sort of experience feels like it's decades, if not centuries or millennia away. It just feels a lifetime away.
Yeah, dude. And it's like, I always say, it's a quote that's always stuck with me. I'm going to butcher it, but the general meaning is like, one of the best feelings in the world is to be able to re-experience your favorite piece of media or life moment all over again for the very first time. And that's what I feel with like the way like games have been getting a remake, weirdly enough. Like even Metal Gear Solid 3 is getting a remake. Look at that. In a couple months it's coming out.
So good. Right.
So with all this stuff, I've been really enjoying like consuming it. And for me, and I understand everybody else's like concerns, like, hey, we want new things, and I get it. Like, but these companies at the end of the day, they're too scared to come up with something entirely new and invest money into it for the chance of like people not liking it. So they know nostalgia is very profitable. So they're going through with all this new technology and doing all the things that they couldn't do with those games back in the day because of limitations, but making a whole new experience with it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and reaching a whole new audience, but obviously the audience that they're trying to reach predominantly is the one that experienced the original in the first place. And I had touched on this a little bit when we're talking about like the creative expression that we have in our games and media. And I talked about how there were challenges in dev cycles that, pushed off development, or if there had been a pushed off date, stuff like that. And I'm trying to like chart my ideas as to when I think we'll see Wilds, for instance. But when you're capitalizing on things where you're iterating on something that's already familiar, it's a much safer bet than creating a brand new IP. And as expectations continue to surmount, as we see those expectations continue to grow, where it's rivaling, multi-million-dollar box office hits, then we see that the stakes are becoming more and more high, and we see a lot of AAA studios kind of caving to that sort of pressure and doubling down on the thing that they know works. And there's nothing wrong with that by any stretch of the imagination. But people need to also remember that what about those middle to upper level AAA studios, or even indie studios, where they could blow their entire life's budget on this, and it could completely flop. Then you've got hundreds of devs out of jobs, and they're not incentivized to try something new or innovative. And I contrasted that with Capcom, who definitely likes to innovate. They're not afraid to challenge the form. They're not afraid to try something new. And so they do. And then the chips fall as they may. You either like it or you hate it, but they're going to do them. And I think it's paid off for them.
I think so too. And like Capcom's legacy in general, like they have so many legacy titles, and if they throw out a title and it's a swing and a miss, they could always come back and do a remake. I think that's what the entire industry has been kind of like doing recently too. Like, unfortunately, RE3, like I didn't play RE3 Remake when it first came out.
Mm-hmm.
It was one of those titles that, I was busy with FF7, I think, at that time. But I recently played it last year around this time, actually. It's been a year since I played it, where I played RE2 Remake and then RE3 Remake back to back. And everybody kept saying like, oh, like RE3 sucks, like you're not going to like it and all this. And playing through it at a very cheaper price than when it first came out, and playing it immediately right after RE2, and then also like with RE4 like releasing a month later, I kind of enjoyed my RE3 like playthrough. And obviously I know I didn't play the original game where like a lot of stuff was unfortunately cut, like the clock tower was cut, and I think there were more elements to the hospital as well that was in there, if I'm not mistaken, that people told me. But for what it was, playing it at a later date and at a lower price tag, I did end up enjoying what I got. But I do feel for the people that on launch, like when the game came out, I do understand why people would have been upset, because like you're waiting for this. Like a lot of people love RE3. It's like one of their favorite like games in the series, rightfully so. But in a way, a lot of the elements that they really enjoyed about it was butchered, and it's really unfortunate. I feel bad when I see that happen. Like people are like severely let down by this remake or by this project that did not fully, I guess, utilize or do all the things that fans expected them to do.
Right. And I don't think it's an unrealistic expectation, because I had touched on unrealistic expectations earlier, right? But I don't think it's an unrealistic expectation to expect to want to experience a game in its entirety, right? I mean, that's why Square Enix broke out 7 into 3 parts, because this is such an ambitious undertaking. And I would love to see more of that, where you're getting a game in its completion. I mean, if you're going to remake a game and you want to capitalize on the nostalgia, you have to have the content people are nostalgia for in the first place. Yeah. If you've cut great swaths of that, I agree. My heart goes out to fans who are really disappointed and really let down by that. That could have been their favorite part of the entire game, and they've been looking forward to it the entire playthrough, only to find out it's not there.
Yeah, sucks, man.
It does. Well, Blitz, I have had just the most tremendous time. I really appreciate you taking the time to spend with me here, and for making the time to have this conversation. Did you have any closing thoughts or comments that you wanted to make, or even questions?
I would like to say, first of all, thank you for having me on here. It's honestly like, I know we've talked briefly through the chat and like comments and stuff, and only recently we got like, I think you reached out, was it yesterday or the day before? And we're here. Yep. It feels like we've been friends for like years, and we're just like going through and like talking about all these experiences and all these things that we've similar like upbringings too. Like I too used to do the same thing with my friends back in the day. Just our imagination and stuff is wild. So I really do love what you do here on this channel. It's a really awesome like space to come in and just talk with, like nerd out about games, or talk about like the technical aspect of things, or like the behind the scenes elements of content creation. I really do appreciate it all. And honestly, in the future, like if you're looking for more opportunities, I would love to come back after Rebirth, so we could talk about like more details, like once we both get to like consume it and go through it, and maybe if we miss some things, talk about it. That would be really awesome as well. Okay. As far as like closing things, man, for those that are watching, if you guys made it to the ending here, I do stream on YouTube and Twitch, and I do make videos on YouTube as well. Bltz, BltzZ, and it's not just going to be Final Fantasy 7 stuff. It'll be other elements outside of RPGs. I do plan to cover Tekken 8 a little bit more. Power World has really, we didn't really talk too much about Power World, but that's a game that really surprised me.
Yep.
I missed its announcement. I had no idea it was coming. It was my friend, another creator, Legions Gaming, that told me about it, and I was like, I'll check it out. And when I downloaded it, I got consumed literally once I started like building and catching pals and just going through the game. I was like, whoa, dude, this game is gonna be here for a while. It's gonna be in my rotation for a while. And it kind of like made me a little unproductive. So I was like, I gotta try to make content on this. But that's another good game. There
went all that time for Persona 3.
Oh, these P games, bro. These P games. I need them. I need to like find time for them.
I mean, for what it's worth, my wife and I are also going through Pal World. I just released a video on Pal World the other day, like I want to say 2 or 3 days ago, when we were talking about verticals and how like we have our core stuff and then trying to branch out. Aspiring creators, just bear in mind that as you start to branch out, your viewership on that stuff you're branching out to is going to be nothing. Like it's gonna be a slow start. So keep trucking. Yeah. I'm in that slow start phase for Pal World, but it's been a lot of fun to play Pokemon with guns.
Yes, it's been absolutely a lot of fun.
So you heard it here. If you haven't already followed Blitz or you don't know Blitz and this is your first time experiencing him, please do me a favor, go and follow, go subscribe to his channel, go check out his videos, get to know him for who he is. I think that today has been an awesome showcase for the type of creator he is and the type of heart that he has for his community as well as games as well. So the description below will be a link to his channel. So if you don't mind doing me a quick favor, I'm going to put you on the spot, Blitz. I want you to close us out. Take us away the same way that you would at the end of one of your videos.
And as always, guys, be sure to like the video if you enjoyed and subscribe if you are new. More CoyoteWildfire videos are on the way. Don't want to miss them. His name is Coyote, and thanks for watching.
I love it.